Having some issues with my diesel heater. Just wondering if the exhaust is supposed to be glowing red like that. Oh, that's flames. I'm glad I was out here when that happened, because that could have been very bad. It's wonderful. What's up, everyone? Welcome to Lowered Expectations. Thanks for lowering your expectations and hanging out with me here. I really do appreciate it. Before we get into the safety warning, a huge thanks to everyone who got involved and got me over the 1,000 subscriber mark. I have handed in my application to YouTube to have this channel monetized, and fingers crossed that happens real soon. I told you guys in my last video that I had a big announcement to make in this video, that I was going to be working with a company. And now I'm going to be telling you guys who that is. The name of the company I'm working with is VEVOR, that's VEVOR. Here in Canada, their website is vevor.ca. In the States, vevor.com, and elsewhere around the world, well, I'm sure you guys can figure it out from here. I've actually purchased a few items from VEVOR before being affiliated with them in any way. I have the heater, of course. I purchased that with my own money. I also purchased a tubing / pipe bender, and I have a VEVOR rotary flex shaft tool that I use for doing porting. If you stick around to the end of the video, I'm going to be sharing a discount code with you guys, also an affiliate link where you can pick up a heater that is similar to mine and help me out in the process. Also, I'm going to be talking about future plans for the channel, including testing on this heater, testing on a brand new heater that VEVOR is going to be sending me, as well as getting involved in some other tool testing. If you guys want to see that, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you at the end of the video. And now for the obligatory safety warning that many of you apparently skip over because you're constantly telling me in the comments that I'm a bad influence. Well, folks, I am telling you, do not do anything that you saw me do just because you saw me do it. Follow your manufacturer's recommendations, whether that be the fuel they tell you to burn, the way they tell you to operate the unit, or the way you are installing it. Do not do what I do. I am doing some crazy testing. I am not using this heater in a recommended way, and doing what I do could cause bodily harm, death, damage to property, loss of property, or a complete loss of the entire universe. Don't do what I do. If you watched all the way to the end of the last video, you may remember that in this video we are going to restrict airflow over the body of the heater, raise the temperature of the heater, and see if that affects the quality of the burn. I've had a few people hypothesize in the comments section that this would raise the burn chamber temperature and it would make for a better quality burn. I hypothesized at the end of the last video that this actually wouldn't work the way people thought it would, and I'm going to try now to explain as best as I can why I think it won't work. Basically what we have here is a flame happening inside of the burn chamber. The heat from that flame gets transferred into the inner walls of the heat exchanger, goes through the heat exchanger, and then gets carried away by the fan. We could affect the temperature of the burn chamber itself, but in order to do so, we would have to limit the amount of heat that the inside of the chamber could absorb. There is a way to do this, and that is called heat soak. Heat soak occurs when a material absorbs so much heat energy that it is limited on how much more energy it can absorb because it can't get rid of that heat. Unfortunately, in order to do this, we would have to get the aluminum extremely hot, and that just won't work because 1, it would melt the housing, 2, the heater would just shut down because of its safeties, and 3, it would just have to get really hot. Like really hot. I'm going to start off on the extreme side of things. I've got the cap almost completely blocked off, so I'm going to thread this on over the end. I've got a couple of pieces that I'm ready to pull off, and I assume that I'll have to do that pretty quick. Then I'm basically going to poke holes or remove tape until I can keep it maintaining a fairly reasonable temperature, if that is even at all possible. So what I'm going to do now is go thread this on the back of the heater, You guys won't be able to see that because it's behind the heater out of the way, but you'll be able to see the results. All right, I have the end cap screwed on. I'm gonna try starting it first in regular mode and switching over to Alpine because it doesn't get enough fuel to start in Alpine mode with waste oil. So right now I've got the whole inlet covered except for one tiny little piece that I've removed this tape from, and it's just barely going up to 200. So I'm gonna let it run for a few minutes, and if it gets say to 210, then I'll remove one more piece of tape, see what happens. One problem with this is that there's not very much heating air actually coming out of the vent out of here. Sounds like it's gonna flame out. I'm gonna hurry with it. The temperature is down to 198, even though I have the air inlet almost completely restricted. So we'll see what it drops to here, and we'll also see if it's able to heat my garage at all. As you guys can see, even though I have the air inlet completely restricted, it is still dropping in temperature. It's just not burning enough fuel with that air. So I'll try to get a shot and show you guys how much restriction I actually have on the air inlet. This is the air inlet right here. And as you guys can see, there's 3 layers of tape almost completely covering it up. And the temperature is still dropping. The temperature is now down to 166. All right. I don't mean to say I told you so, but I think it was pretty immediately obvious that this is not the solution. As you guys can see, that test was a complete failure. I normally don't call something a failure until I've tested it a few times, but the reason why this won't work is that you would have to raise the temperature of the heat exchanger significantly before it would ever have any effect on the combustion process. Even if you did insulate the body of the heater or the heat exchanger enough so that it could affect the temperature or the combustion process, you would kind of make the heater useless because the heat would all be going back into the combustion process instead of going into the space that you're trying to heat. So I've moved on to something else, and what I'm doing is kind of somewhat related to this, but a little bit different, and a bunch of you are going to be yelling at your screen and smashing on the keyboard telling me that I'm an idiot, which is perfectly fine. Go ahead and do that. What I'm doing is feeding hot air from the hot air of the heater back into the inlet to help with combustion. And a lot of you are screaming that hot air isn't as dense, it doesn't have as much oxygen, so it's actually going to make it burn with more soot. And while that has a little bit of truth to it, there is a little bit more to it than that. For example, on a car that has a turbocharger, or any engine that has a turbocharger, the turbo compresses the fuel and air, makes it more dense. You can add more fuel, which gives you more power. But they run that air from the turbo through a intercooler to cool it off. But the reason why they run it through the intercooler to cool it off is so that it doesn't cause spark knock. Spark knock occurs because the fuel mixing with that hot air going into the hot combustion chamber, it can actually ignite before the spark happens. So you're creating a mixture of fuel and air that will ignite easier. And that is exactly what we want here. We want a complete burn. We don't care about when it burns. Well, somewhat we do. We want it to burn inside of the chamber, but we're not going to have a problem of pre-ignition damaging an engine or anything like that. We want this to burn as easily as possible. So feeding hot air into the combustion chamber could actually make this thing run better. What I'm going to do for this test is exactly what you guys see here. I've got the inlet connected to this tube that goes around and is connected where the hot air comes out of the heater. So it is going to be shooting hot air out of here. Some of that hot air will be pulled back into the intake and hopefully help vaporize the fuel and make it burn better. Will this work? I don't know. I'm guessing not, but we're going to give it a go. Did that rhyme? I didn't mean for it to. Let's turn this on, switch it over, and see what happens. Once again, I'm going to try to make this run on Alpine mode. I'm going to start it up first on the normal mode and then switch it over and see how it reacts. If it works at all, then we'll leave it in Alpine mode, and if it doesn't work, then we'll have to switch it back to the normal mode and hope that it doesn't overheat. Temperature has now gone up to 206 degrees Celsius and it's still climbing. If it gets up to like 220, then what I will do, or when it gets to 220, what I'm going to do is actually switch it over to Alpine mode and see how low the temperature drops. But I assume that if I leave it this way, it's actually going to overheat, so we don't want that. I'm gonna go take a look outside and see if we got a bunch of smoke coming in with the exhaust or if it's clean. Switched it over to Alpine mode to see if we can get it to clean up some. I've been running this thing for about an hour now, and I thought I would show you guys something that I found a little bit interesting. The temperature has stabilized, I was gonna say between 206 and 208, but it just popped up to 210. But yeah, sometimes in the past when it's making under 200, the pipe, the exhaust pipe itself will run like 240 Celsius, 250 Celsius. It's running very hot. I've been told by other people, and I've found to be true myself, when it's running on diesel at normal operation, the exhaust comes out, the exhaust temperature on the pipe itself is about 200 Celsius. And I've been checking my ductwork quite frequently. I've got this piece of tape on here. I've got the two pieces of tape. Normally up there it's about 56 to 58 degrees, and down here it's about 100 degrees, and yeah, it changes quite a bit, but I can tell by touching it already that it's not 100 degrees. Anyway, so what I'm going to do now is check a few of these temperatures. About 180, 187 at max. Over here about 120. All right, but this is what I find most interesting, because I know the temperature of this is almost always pretty close to exactly 100, just under 100, and it is 52 Celsius. And up here is normally 56 or 58, is also about 51 or 52. So the exhaust coming out of this is a lot cooler. So I think what's happening, I'm going to explain this, maybe you guys will tell me that I'm an idiot, but I think what's happening is more of the burn is actually happening inside of the chamber. I think when I burn oil, typically what happens is the oil ends up running out of the burn chamber. So the oil comes in back here, and the combustion area is right about here in the heater, and all of that combustion is supposed to happen here, and then the heat goes out, comes in around the end of the heat exchanger, back out, and then out the exhaust. and that gives it time to lose its heat into the body of the heater and be dispersed into your whatever space that you're heating. But what happens quite frequently with this, and the reason why it shows really high temperatures, is that the oil actually runs out into the body of the heat exchanger, and that is where the combustion occurs. Because the combustion is occurring in the body of the heat exchanger, the temperature shows really hot, but most of that heat can't be absorbed into the exchanger. Most of that heat then has a very short distance before it just goes out the exhaust. And so that's why most of the time when it's running, the exhaust is very, very hot, because a lot of burning is still occurring as it's going out the exhaust, or very close to the exhaust. Where when it's running properly on diesel, or when it's running as it is now, apparently, more of the combustion process is actually happening in the chamber and is able to be absorbed into the heat exchanger and then put into my workspace instead of just going out the exhaust. A long rant, hope it makes sense. I was just checking on the heater and everything looked okay. I was checking a few things, and as I was checking it, the exhaust started glowing. I've got the light on my phone, but I don't know if you guys can see right there, it is glowing. So I'm going to turn the light off. I'm guessing that can't be picked up by the camera, but yeah, it's glowing. Quite a bit brighter than it looks on the camera. Okay, so the heater is shut down. I shut it down, but before I shut it down, I basically was messing with this. The tape came off, and so I tried to redo it, and what happened was I decided to pull the intake pipe off. When I pulled the intake pipe off, it backfired and stopped flaming. Basically, the flame went out, and instead of letting it fill itself full of oil, what I did was I hit the off button and shut it down, and now it's cooling off. I'm going to try to restart it and see what happens. I assume that I'm probably going to be coming out in a few hours and taking this apart and looking inside, but I'm going to try to start it up now and run it for the next few hours. It's burnt that much fuel, so yeah, it probably carboned up inside, but I'm going to try to start it back up. I was messing around with it. I restarted the heater. It is back up to a stable 208, as you can see, and the ductwork is now back to a reasonable-ish temperature. You guys missed out on me coming out at 1 a.m. and putting fuel in this thing. I didn't film it because nothing exciting was happening. So I came in, mixed up some fuel, put another bunch of fuel in it, and this is how much it burnt before it shut off. So it seemed to be working perfectly fine. It burnt that much. I was up till 2 a.m. I looked at the temperature, everything seemed to be going okay, and then yeah, it shut off. So I'm gonna take it down off the shelf now, pull it apart, and see what's going on. But I have to assume that this experiment is also a fail, and that feeding hot air in didn't help it burn any cleaner whatsoever. I just got it down off of the shelf, and I'm guessing that you guys can't see in there very well, but I'm looking into the exhaust, and it actually looks like it's burning quite clean here, but I think it's because it's actually burning outside of the chamber. I think I mentioned it yesterday in one of the clips. I think a lot of the burning is actually happening outside of the main burn chamber in the heat exchanger, and that's why the exhaust is getting so hot. So you can actually see, hopefully the camera can pick that up, there is some white stuff there. All right, here it comes. It's a bit of an oily mess inside of here. Yeah, there's actual, not as bad as I would have thought. It sits on its side like this, with this side at the bottom, and that's why there is an oily mess there. As you guys can see around this area, there is more of that white stuff, which I have to assume at this point means that we've got some combustion process that's actually happening outside of the burn chamber in that area. The burn chamber itself is quite the nasty mess. Not sure how well the camera picks that up, but even around the bottom here where the gasket surface is, you can see, oh yeah, I'm gonna get the garbage can and not scrape this onto the floor. This seems to be a little bit better than what I did last time. Maybe that's just because it didn't run as long. Unfortunately, I don't really know how long it ran because it shut off during the night. I can make assumptions based on the amount of fuel it burnt. But yeah, I can't say for sure. Thanks for making it all the way to the end of the video. I do appreciate it. In the next one, I'm going to be doing some modifications to the burn chamber to try to get a little bit more airflow through it and hopefully clean up the burn. We need some help with that. I have ordered a new ECU and controller, and hopefully that will give me control over the air-fuel ratio so I can lean it out a bit, and that should also help. Now I'm going to try to talk to you guys about the promo codes and the affiliate link. I suppose at some point I will get used to this, but this is all very surreal to me, so please bear with me as I struggle my way through this. There is an affiliate link to a 5 kilowatt heater that is similar to mine in the description below. If you decide to purchase that, you will be helping me out. You can also use promo code VVS10 to get $10 off, or VV promo to get 5% off store-wide. Did I do good? Before I get into any future plans of this channel, I just wanted to say that if VEVOR watched the same videos that you guys did and they decided to support me just like you did, then they must be just as cool as you guys are. A big thanks to VEVOR and a big thanks to everyone who's been supporting me, whether that be subscribing, giving a thumbs up, getting involved in the comments, giving me suggestions, and all kinds of safety warnings. I do appreciate all of it. The future of this channel, well, I'm going to continue on with the testing of the diesel heater to see if I can get it to burn waste motor oil relatively well. I'm also going to be testing for sure another VEVOR heater that they are going to send me. I'm going to be burning actual diesel in it, and I'm going to be testing some other tools. I don't want to say what they are yet because if I get my hopes up too high, I'm sure it's all going to come crashing down. So let's just keep our fingers crossed and hope that it works out. If you guys want to support me on Patreon, there is a link in the description below. I also have a second channel, which is the Joel Arsenault YouTube channel, where I do jet ski stuff. If that sounds like something you might be interested in, feel free to check that out. That's going to do it for this one. I'm happy. Thanks for watching. See you next time.